Welcome to Choose You First, a self direction podcast by PPL, where we dive deep into the long term care option of self direction. I'm your host, Kelli Barnett-Carey of PPL. In this episode, we're truly honored to have a very special guest with us, someone who has been a guiding light in the field of self direction, Claude Schmincke. Claude has been working in the self direction space for about 30 years. First, as the sibling of an individual in need of home support care. Second, as an employee taking care of their sibling as their paid job. Third, as a consultant at a small fiscal intermediary supporting his family and others in New Jersey, until his current role at PPL, where he works tirelessly to truly make self direction easier for all. Throughout his life, spent enmeshed in self direction, he has gone to school at Boston University SFA, spent more than 10 years in the financial business, lived and studied abroad at Aarhus Business Academy in Denmark, and returned to the United States to be happily married and look after two wonderful cats. We had a fascinating conversation where we talked about overcoming the intimidation of paperwork, the essence of power of self-direction, and his personal experiences with the program. I'm so excited to share this conversation with Claude, and I hope you like his stories too. Enjoy. Welcome, Claude. It's so nice for you to join us here. Basically, we just want to know about you and your life and your experiences with self-direction. I know that you have some personal experience and also professional experience. So wherever you want to start, just tell us about a little bit about your life and how you kind of got into this and just take it away.
Okay. Well, I guess you could say I've been involved in self-direction ever since my brother was born. So I've got about 30 plus years of experience, let's just say. Obviously, he wasn't in a self-directed program immediately. That did happen over time. I believe he entered the current program he's in around early 2000. So, maybe 23 years, let's say, I've been involved in self-direction in some capacity. Obviously, first I started as just a sibling of someone who was in a self-directed program. Eventually, I became an employee, a caregiver. So I was providing care for him and getting paid. That was my job for a bit. And then obviously after that, I moved on to being a consultant at a fiscal intermediary, not PPL, but one that was smaller and existed in New Jersey. And then when PPL came in and got the contract for New Jersey, I moved on to work for PPL, and that's where I am now.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know that you had some other background. You had gone into finance for a little bit.
Oh, yeah. So,
Yeah.
okay, we can talk about that.
Well, I was just wondering, did you leave and come back, or did you?
Sure.
What was your? Yeah.
So I had I guess you'd say a colorful, all over the place kind of life and career, where I went to school initially in high school for performing arts. I was in a specific performing arts program there. I moved on to Boston University, where I was in the School for the Arts there. But when I left that, obviously didn't work out. Don't quit your day job, as they say. So I just entered the financial district, and I started working for a financial company, ING. Basically, I was working on helping people with retirement plans, investments. I got my Series 7 and Series 6, making sure that, stock trades were done on time and all that fun financial stuff, which honestly was a lot. But, it was paying the bills, so I was doing that. And then over the course of time, especially with the way the financial business was going, at the same time that my boss was considering laying off a bunch of us, I met my now current wife online, and she lived in Denmark. So I moved to Denmark. I lived with her there for a couple years. I went to school there at Aarhus Business Academy. I studied multimedia design and stuff like that. And then eventually we came back to the States, and we started living here again, close to my brother and my mother, to help take care of him. And I just started my career from there in self-direction, and that's where we are now.
That's exciting. What was it like whenever you came back from being away and kind of jumping back into a kind of a caregiving role?
It was definitely a change, obviously, because I had a lot of interesting experiences over in Denmark, just seeing how their social structures worked and their basically their programs over there. So I had a broader perspective than just the American perspective on
Sure.
everything, really,
Yeah.
healthcare, whatever you want to, look at. And so coming into the healthcare system again here, just being involved, it was definitely interesting, but it allowed me to say, no, we don't have to do it this way. We
Hmm.
can do it this way. I've seen it work in
Yeah.
other countries, so
Yeah.
that has prepared me, and I do like bringing that viewpoint to my current work as well,
Hmm.
especially. It's also just it's very different, especially when I'm working in the business field now, talking with people who have no insight into what a caregiver does, how self-direction works. You can have individuals who work for managed care organizations here, an MCO, who they're very aware of what it entails
Hmm.
to get a self-directed program working, but they don't really understand the day-to-day that a
Agreed. Hmm.
caregiver goes through.
Hmm.
And I know that a lot of different rules and regulations exist because individuals who wrote those rules and regulations probably don't understand that either.
Hmm.
So it has been really helpful in my work here to be able to talk with state officials, talk with managed care organizations as well, and educate
Hmm.
them on the best practices that work from a business perspective, molding well with exactly what works for an individual in that field, both the individual who's receiving the care, their family as well, and obviously the care provider.
Hmm. What kind of things have you talked to them about? What would be, do you have an elevator pitch, for example, of describing the situation to them?
Yeah, yeah. So the best thing that I always give somebody, especially who's familiar with the field a little and doesn't really understand,
Hmm.
is that self-direction is really just giving someone the power to stay within the community,
Hmm.
not go into a facility, and having power over living the way they want and receiving the care that they do.
Hmm.
So you have a lot of individuals who are living in the community, but they're getting agency services sent to them. They really don't have any control over that, and it's just really explaining to them what that means. And control is what it's really about, and that if you are self-directing your own care, there's a lot of responsibility, and people have to keep that in mind, that it's not for everyone.
Right.
And I want to make that clear too, that you have to know what you're getting into, because it could be too stressful for you.
Hmm.
But even if it is too stressful, we have so many opportunities in New Jersey and also in other states that allow you to still self-direct your own care, even if you're not ready for it or you're not prepared, because there's authorized representatives. You can assign someone to represent you and do all the paperwork and manage all that.
Hmm.
And so letting them understand that it's a big commitment is important, because they need to understand that and be aware. They can't go into it blind, but then also understanding that organizations like us are here to help you every step of the way.
Hmm.
And if you're not getting the help that you need, we want to hear about it. We want to
Yeah.
hear why you aren't getting the help you need, and then pass that on. And it could be, just a simple issue of just not connecting with the right person, or it could be an actual, like, legislation rule that
Mm.
we have to talk about, with people who, we don't set the rules, but we're going to advocate for you as best as we can, and make sure that that happens. So it's a complicated and a nebulous kind of business, I want to
Mhm.
say,
Yeah.
because when I talk about it, no one seems to really understand it
Okay.
until I really, really get into the nitty gritty. But if
Mhm.
you just want to elevator pitch it,
Mhm.
it really is, oh, it's anyone who needs to receive care within their own home so that
Mhm.
they don't have to go into a facility or have an assigned agency sent to them. They get to choose who their worker is and who
Mhm.
will come provide those services for them.
That's excellent. Is there any emphasis that you give, anyone really, MCOs or state agencies, on the caregiver perspective of supports that they maybe need? Like maybe they got enrolled and they're providing services, but maybe they need additional support, or they need to have this acknowledged or something like that.
Oh yeah, and that's a constant thing. Usually it's stuff that we can maybe do.
Mhm.
But I think that a lot of the things that caregivers need, that we're constantly talking about, especially with state officials and lawmakers, is is that a caregiver might need uh, paid time off. They might need benefits.
Mhm.
And a lot of these programs don't offer benefits.
Right.
It's just not part of the program. And so if the idea is Well, the reason why this person is working in this field is to take care of someone, yes,
Mhm.
but it's also that they can take care of someone and also make a living
Mhm.
and be successful. Maybe we need to look into adding benefits to these programs,
Mhm.
giving someone health care if they are a caregiver, putting it as part of the whole process. And what kind of grants exist? Is that
Yeah.
possible with government budgets? And it's all down to obviously, government budgets,
Yeah.
Medicaid rules, and all that
Always.
kind of stuff. And we know that. But a lot of people will enter into the caregiver space and expect that because we're stressing that this is a real job, that they are expecting that kind of stuff. They want benefits, they want paid time off, they want vacation time,
Right.
all that kind of stuff. And it is difficult to educate someone, especially if they're a caregiver who is not a family member or isn't really familiar, and they're being hired just to come in and take care of someone in their own home, like what this really means, what rights are available to them with this job. Most people do this because they either have no choice or they just like helping people, and that's
Mhm.
fine too. If they have another way to get health care or whatever they need that's not directly through their job, that's great. And,
Mhm.
and, and many people do, but it is important, I think, to make sure it's clear that depending on what state you're in or what the
Mhm.
benefit program is, you might not have those options available to you, and that what that looks like. So
Right.
what options will you have in the future? Are they talking about it? Is it just not in the cards? And then we get the best people for the best jobs, hopefully, and we can get people who are both supported, in this kind of field, as well as people who want to do it.
Of course. Definitely. Is there anything about your, life and career so far that you wanted to make sure that you mentioned to us?
Um, I mean, there's so much. I think really that I think the most important thing that I've come to realize is that everyone, especially with the pandemic,
Mhm.
knows that a lot of the time, the most important people in our lives who will look out for us
Mhm.
are those that we both trust and care about, being family, friends, and also just really close people who we vetted and
Mhm.
trusted. And that's what this program or any self-directed program can really do, firing into the hands of the individual who's receiving that care or somebody who is representing them, who they've designated or is designated for them. That gives you the power to make decisions that affect your life.
Mhm.
And I think that especially if you have to enter into a facility, and it's not just if you have a disability, it could even be elderly,
Mhm.
and you have to put your hands or your life in someone else's hands. It's really important that those decisions being made are from someone that you trust. And if you're going into a facility, you can definitely hope that you trust the individuals who run it, who are there, but there's no guarantee. There's just no guarantee. And so this kind of program allows you to live a life that most people take for granted. I take it for granted every day when I can just
Mhm.
go to the supermarket with no issues
Right.
and get what I want and come home. That's a simple
Mhm.
thing that everyone does, but many people who are in programs like this don't have that opportunity. They don't have the ability to do that. And stuff like that, even just getting up in the morning is
Yeah.
so important. And you could be bedridden and you could get up if you had help,
Mhm.
but there's nobody really help you, so you're just bedridden for most of the day, except
Mhm.
when you have to go to the bathroom.
Mhm.
And with a program like this, you could like have someone help you up in the morning.
Yeah.
You're active, you're up, you're engaged, and then you have as best a life as you possibly can.
Yeah.
And I
That's
think
amazing.
that's one of the most important things about
Yeah.
self-direction that I could like express to someone, like why this is so important.
Right. Yes. And you work with participants in the course of your work, right?
So yes, I don't interact with participants as much now that I'm not consultant. With
Mhm.
which when I was a consultant, I would go into homes. I
Yeah.
would basically sit with them, walk them through the whole process, make sure that they had no questions. They would call me, and they would call me
Yeah.
when there were questions or concerns or problems. But now it's just much more of working with the other consultants that do that,
Mhm.
making sure that I educate managed care organizations on basically how the process works,
Mhm.
but also making sure that they don't have any questions, especially with everything that goes into they're managing that individual's care. They need to know exactly what we do or what the program is doing, and making sure that we're all on the same page there.
Mhm.
There's a lot of data transfer and stuff like that. So it's a lot more business, communication and engagement work right now,
Mhm.
than actually going into people's homes as I used to.
Sure.
But that was a big deal, and we obviously that's probably the most important job that we do here is when we actually interact with both participants in the program as well as their providers or employees or their authorized representatives.
Yeah, and working with the folks that manage these programs is so important as well to make sure that they understand exactly what exactly their decisions are impacting. Like if
Yeah,
they have the option of offering, extra benefits or extra pay or something that is a direct influence on these people's lives.
absolutely.
Um, when you did work with participants in their homes, how was that for you?
Oh, I loved it. It
You
was
loved
great.
it? Yeah.
I loved it. You do a lot of driving,
Mhm.
so it was like I would get so many books on tape done.
Yeah, sure.
And but when you go into homes, it's like, you just they're trusting you,
Mhm.
and it's almost like you get an insight into their lives. You get to see what's working for them, what's not, and or I knew exactly, the best way for them to get their needs met. So giving that advice and offering that is so helpful, but it's even more helpful when you have an individual who just has cerebral palsy, for example, who cannot speak, and
Mhm.
you're holding a conversation with them because they're using a keyboard,
Mhm.
and you're talking to them as an
Mhm.
individual, as a human being,
Right.
and you're hearing, like, a funny joke that they heard
Yeah.
and laughing with them, and then
Yeah.
you're going on to them saying, yeah, it's really difficult to do this and this, and you're giving them advice, and then they tell you, oh no, actually the best way around this state system is to
Is
go through
this?
this office.
Mhm.
And then that makes me sit up and go, well, thank you, you just educated me,
Exactly.
because they know how to get through certain issues or problems on their own because they've been
Mhm.
doing a lot of this stuff their whole lives.
Right.
So I think that the best thing about going into people's homes is what you learn
Mhm.
and what you're taught by them.
That's so exciting. Was there ever a time that going into someone's home especially resonated with you or something that you especially hold dear to your heart?
There's been a lot.
Yeah.
I think that the most recent
Mhm.
is one of the participants that, I met. We developed a sort of rapport, and he still emails me, basically, maybe like once a month or every
Yeah.
2 months, just to like tell me about how he's doing. And I do local community theater,
Mhm.
and he actually, I would just tell him that I'm in this show, and he actually came
Oh, that's
to a
nice.
show that I was in, Clue, on stage in
Oh,
February, and it was nice to connect with him through that, and he got to see what I do in my spare time, and it was nice to see him out and about. And obviously, they had to have a special wheelchair accessible area for him for the show, which we do have at the theater, which was
amazing.
also great.
Yeah.
And I think that it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't been there to go into his house and basically been accepted and trusted. And it
Yeah.
took time, because when I first met him, he didn't talk. He just,
Mhm.
like, was in the room. His parents were doing most of the talking,
Mhm.
and he wasn't really that engaged. And I think maybe the second visit or something, he was actually in, moving around, and I actually like talked to him,
Mhm.
because I got that opportunity to. And I think that surprised him.
Yeah.
He's probably used to a lot of people coming into homes, just, if they're not talking to you, then you probably don't want to talk back to them.
Sure.
But sometimes when you make that connection, it just it just really exploded into, oh well, I should take the initiative. I
Mhm.
shouldn't just try to be polite. I should actually take the initiative and talk to people, even if they're not talking, to see
Yeah.
if that will, sort of like engage them. And it did. And we worked into a friendship and a good relationship. And I think that that kind of stuff stays with me as well. And I know that anytime someone reaches out to me who used to be, on my caseload,
Yeah.
it, it it's it's just a great feeling, because I've got I've built that connection with them, being in their home, face to face, meeting them as well.
That's amazing. And it's very much the embodiment of like focusing on the people first.
Yeah, yeah, it's very person centered, especially this program, but all programs, in my opinion, should be, in
Hmm.
that you can't just put someone in a peg,
Yeah.
especially if they're round and it's a square.
Hmm.
But more than that, it's every single person is different, because you can have someone with the exact same diagnosis, and they could have a completely different life as someone who has it. And if you're just looking at the numbers and you're saying, well, this person has this A and it should be like everybody else, it never is. And
No,
I think that that's what you also get to see when you meet individuals face to face like that, within the environment that they're living in.
that's amazing. Um, Shifting gears slightly, but we were talking about, or you were talking about, getting them enrolled and walking them through the paperwork and things like that. Can you describe for us how, in your experience, people get enrolled in these programs? So, like, how do people learn about these programs? How do they get enrolled? What is that experience like for them?
So it's different in every state. But in New Jersey, for example, it is a Medicaid-based program. There are
Mhm.
other programs that exist that are not Medicaid. For example, there's an elderly program that doesn't touch on Medicaid. But usually it's whatever government entity is managing that is the first step. So in this example in New Jersey, we'll talk about managed care organizations. Obviously, they used to be called HMOs. Now they're MCOs, for managed care organizations, because they rebranded.
Of course.
And so those MCOs are the ones that's your first step in New Jersey. So you would make sure that you would be reaching out to your care manager or your caseworker, and finding out, like, well, what's this self-directed program? It's called the Personal Preference Program in New Jersey. They're called different in every state.
Mhm.
You'd be asking them, like, well, what does this entail? Like, how do I get enrolled? How do I qualify? And they would walk you through. There's specific eligibility requirements in New Jersey, and many other programs share this in other states too, where you have to be on a specific New Jersey Family Care Medicaid program, for
Mhm.
example. You have to meet certain income requirements, stuff like that.
Mhm.
But it is different everywhere, honestly. And as long as you're looking within your state for self-directed programs, you can usually find the state entity that manages that, and they will usually point you to what the next entity is to contact. Obviously, if you contact public partnerships and they manage something within your state, they will always refer you exactly to where you need to go, because we have that experience
Mhm.
and we know how someone gets enrolled. But if someone contacted me, for example, I would refer them to their managed care organization. There's 5 in New Jersey
Mhm.
currently. And then, based on whatever managed care organization was assisting them or they were signed up with, they would do an assessment. They would make sure that they walked through that whole process, and then they would assign someone what their grant would be.
Mhm.
And then that information would be referred to us, and a consultant, like I used to do, would then go out to their home, enroll them, make sure that they were all set up properly and had no questions.
That's
And
awesome.
then they start submitting time, and they, as the individual, would be approving that time the employee was working, or if an authorized representative was designated, he would be, or she would be, basically approving those timesheets, and they would be paying that employee to take care of them in their own home.
Excellent. And then when you were helping them with their enrollment, were you also helping them with any sort of day-to-day questions?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah.
Many times someone would ask me a question that had nothing to do with either public partnerships or the self-directed program. They would be like, well, I have this thing in DDD that
Yeah.
is causing me some pain. And,
Mm.
if I knew, I would help them out where I
Yeah.
could point them towards. But obviously, if always with the grain of salt that we don't always know everything. We're not experts in that field. So don't take my word for it. Really do your own research. But, this is what I think would help you, and this is where you could go. And just being an advocate in that way as well. Because if you get enough questions like that,
Yeah.
we always feed that back up, and then our leadership knows, and we're
Mhm.
all asking, like, well, this is a big hot topic that everybody is interested in and engaged in. What
Mhm.
can we do to
Yeah.
make this information more readily available to them?
That's amazing. Do you have any examples of those things? Like any question or any issue that had come up that you got some extra support for?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of overlap, for example, in New Jersey with both the Personal Preference Program and the Division of Developmental Disabilities, the DDD program. And so a lot of the times you get questions that reflect DDD that have nothing to do with the Personal Preference Program,
Sure.
and it's not really within our sphere.
Mhm.
But it's easy enough to say, but you need to contact this state office at DDD,
Mhm.
give them a call,
Mhm.
and they'll point you in the right direction. Sometimes anecdotally, it's been an actual case of, oh, I already dealt with this. It's
Mhm.
actually it's not the personal preference program's budget that you want to dip into for this kind of
Mhm.
need.
Sure.
This is an outside need that is only covered through your DDG budget. You need
Mhm.
to contact your caseworker, make sure that they're up to speed on what you need. Let's say it's a handrail that you need
Mhm.
to be installed into your home, and they will help you with that and walk you through that process.
If someone close to you was considering self-direction as a long-term care option, what advice would you give them based on your experiences?
I would say that it's the best thing you can do.
Yeah.
Make sure that you have a reliable worker. If it's a
Mhm.
family member, great, because you can usually rely on them. Well, let's hope. You never know.
Hopefully. Get 'em out.
But even then, if it is a family member, make sure you have a reliable worker. Because at the end of the day, if this person doesn't show up to work or isn't able to do what they're
Mhm.
doing, and it might not be their fault. Obviously, we've seen, with the pandemic and everything that happened,
Mhm.
sometimes people were quarantined, they were unable to leave their own home.
Mhm.
So if you have a backup in place,
Mhm.
make sure that there's always a backup in place. Make sure that if that person doesn't show up, you have someone else who can do these services for you, because you can't get out of bed, for example, if someone
Mhm.
doesn't get there. That's
Sure.
a big deal if
Yeah.
they're sick or they can't see you.
Mhm.
So it's a lot of explaining that. It's also explaining to them that, remember that you're signing up to be an employer, so that comes with tax paperwork, that comes with
Mhm.
tax responsibilities. Make sure that you're well versed in IRS rules, and
Mhm.
we'll point you to that, and we'll walk you through everything. But
Mhm.
we want to make sure that you know what you're getting into.
Mhm.
And other than that, it's just, what freedoms do you want that you
Mhm.
don't currently have? Like, could a certain program help you achieve that? That
Mhm.
would be another thing that I would probably talk to about. And also just eligibility questions, making sure that
Sure.
someone is eligible for these programs, because you could need services for your specific life situation, but maybe you're not eligible, and
Sure.
you need to find out what would be needed for you to become eligible for these programs.
Mhm. What would you say to someone who thinks like self-direction would be really great in my life? I would love to stay in my home. I would love to have, my family member, my friend take care of me. And I'm just not sure, or I'm intimidated by the amount of responsibility that I have. Like, I don't know that I can do it. Is there something that you could say to them to help encourage them or give them some kind of support for maybe tackling self-direction, even though it is a little bit scary?
I would probably tell anybody who's trying to enter this space of self-direction, or even contemplating self-directing their own care or directing the care of a loved one, that you should be worried, you should be concerned, you should be like, oh, this is a lot, because it's a lot, and that's okay. But
Hmm.
so is everything. So is
Yeah.
everything in life. It's just like getting a new job, or going to school, or just moving.
Hmm.
Moving is a big deal, and there's all these kind of concerns, but it shouldn't stop you. It should never stop you, because if you don't try to look into it, if you don't try to pursue it, you could be basically stuck in whatever situation that you're trying to get out of, with
Hmm.
no alternative except to rely on a facility that you have to go to, or rely even on an agency where they're sending people to you. And it might be a lot of upfront work, but not only do you have people there with you, especially like public partnerships, for the entire time you're on this program, to reach out to provide guidance for, it also, it's not that much work once you get into the habit of it, once you get into the routine. Once you
Hmm.
get everything set up, it's pretty easy, and a lot of people swear by these programs once they get used to it.
Sure.
Once they get into the routine, once they get that upfront, like uh, basically tackling all the IRS paperwork and all those forms that you have to fill out. It's a lot of forms, we
Hmm.
understand that. But we'll help you through the way. We'll help you on your journey, and then you'll walk for the rest of your life on. And we'll still be here.
Yeah.
We'll still be beside you as much as you need. If you can lean on us, you can. But our goal is to just educate you, and help you along, so that you can just do this on your own. And one day, hopefully, you'll be the one who's encouraging someone else to self-direct their own care, because you've been through it.
Yeah. That's amazing. Um, speaking of, there are advocacy groups and there are like peer networking groups. Do you have any experience with those kinds of groups or interacting with them in any way?
Yep, absolutely. We're part of actually a group currently that just advises the state with the EVV electronic
Mm-hmm.
visit verification work that they did. And we've
Mm-hmm.
kept that group going, even though that work is done, because that group is full of parents who are advocacy members as well. And we want their feedback on how the program's going. So we meet
Yeah.
quarterly now just to talk about any changes that they want to see, anything that just happened recently that they're concerned about, and just really talk about the program so that we can build these programs in a way that is always keeping in mind the individuals that they serve, which
Mm-hmm.
I feel is the most important thing to do. Because as
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned earlier, if you don't have that perspective, you don't know what you don't know. And things could be changed that you don't think much of as a lawmaker, that it's
Mm-hmm.
that big a deal. Like you could probably even think like everyone can do this. And
Right.
if the population cannot, and if it's an uphill battle for them, that's something to take into consideration. And if there's an opportunity to create a different way of doing something that works for everyone involved, then why not explore that?
Yeah, absolutely. Has there been anything in the advocacy groups that you were able to help implement or something that really stood out to you?
Yeah, I would say that our app, Time for Care, which Public Partnerships uses to enter time, has gone through some really drastic, I'd say,
Yeah.
upgrades because of interactions like that. I know that I worked hard with our team
Yeah.
in crafting feedback that was direct from that group, where they presented the app, and these are the changes we're thinking about. And
Great.
the feedback they got was, this is good, this is good, this is good. I don't really like the tone
Mhm.
of this red exclamation point.
Right.
It would make me get nervous and
Sure.
stressed, and we have so much stress in our lives because of everything going on. I don't want that. So they reconsidered that and they changed it a bit, and they changed other things to make a calendar feature look
Yeah.
more interesting, and that's helped mold and shaped the actual app that we provide, that they use
Yeah.
to submit time. And that was great. I love the fact that they had that influence and they had
Yeah.
that ability to not only have their voices heard, but then see
Mhm.
the actual change once those changes were released.
That's amazing. And having your voice heard is just so important. And especially when, as you said, so much other stress and so much other chaos is going on in your lives. That's amazing. I would love to hear any other stories you have about the advocacy group or anything from getting everybody enrolled or anything like that.
I'm the only thing that I can think of right now is that the one great thing right now is as one of the productions my local theater is talking about putting on is due to an individual who actually is in the program, self-directing his own care, talking about his life experience
Mhm.
with cerebral palsy, and he's written it,
Yeah.
and it's a play, and it's pretty
Oh,
funny,
amazing.
and
Amazing.
that's going to be going up, hopefully, either towards the end of this year or next. And we'll see how that goes, but I'm very excited about it, and
That's
it's just
exciting.
something that like merges both of my worlds in a way
Exactly.
that I really like and enjoy. I know that the state's aware of that as well, and we'll
Yeah.
see once it goes up if we can promote it. And I'm just very 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 excited to about that, because one of the most important things to me is, especially what we talked about today, is having that voice heard.
Hmm.
And a play allows you, or a movie, but any kind of medium allows you to see a story in the most empathetic way possible, because you're put into that individual's shoes
Yeah.
as the main character of that show or that story.
Yeah.
And
Amazing.
hopefully that kind of experience will allow more and more individuals to just feel that, oh, right, yeah, that person who I saw
Yeah.
moving past in a wheelchair or being pushed by someone is an individual human
Yes.
being who's
Yes.
just like me.
Yeah.
And you don't always think that about that. And the more people who see that and feel that, the more we'll be able to help them and understand, what they might need to just
Absolutely.
live regular lives.
That's exciting. Well, amazing. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Of course.
Looking to the future, what changes or improvements would you like to see in the self-direction model?
I think that, like we said, more benefits for caregivers is
Mhm,
a great thing. I know that, we've been talking about daily pay here in New Jersey,
mhm,
that releasing that will probably hopefully help people as well.
mhm,
But one of the really great things that we could really look at, I think, is just overall, like what kind of um, features or budget concerns go into these programs, and
mhm,
how much they're getting in a facility as opposed to when they're living in their own home, and then how we can merge the good things about a facility where you get even more care with the freedom of being in your own home. And one of those important improvements that we want to see
mhm,
is that the ability to have multiple employees always signed up, ready to go.
mhm,
Maybe like provider directories that are statewide, where
mhm.
an individual who cannot find an employee has the ability to go, I'd really like to self-direct, but I can't find anybody to do it.
Sure.
How can I do that? Well, you just log into this,
Yeah.
provider directory that, everyone is vetted on already, and you can
Mhm,
just look through. That would be amazing. And I know that other states have tried that.
mhm,
Some are successful more than others. We've assisted on some as well to help
mhm,
people, but that's probably the most important future proofing thing that we could ever do,
mhm.
because there's so many people right now who are not part of these programs because
Sure.
they run into that barrier where they just can't find someone. They've tried local churches, they've tried,
Mhm.
we don't say, go to Craigslist, but
Yeah.
people have tried.
Right.
But that kind of stuff is always something that we're trying to push, see how it could happen. That would be the most exciting, I think,
Yeah.
for individuals, or even just directories for authorized representatives where
Really? Hmm.
you don't have the capability of even speaking on the phone,
Sure.
but you need someone to manage these programs for you. And if there's some kind of way to look up individuals who would be
Yeah.
willing to act as a representative for you, as well as providers and employees, that could go a long way in ensuring that people who need the care they deserve get that care.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's an angle that I haven't considered before is the need for authorized representatives.
Yeah.
Not everybody has a trusted family member that
No.
they would want to put their reins in.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't self-direct because they run into that barrier. They even have an employee, especially if you're talking about, let's just use an example, a single parent
Mhm,
who's taking care of their child who has a
mhm,
disability. That child is not able to represent themselves. They are the only person that provides that care. They
mhm.
basically have, fought their whole lives probably to basically make sure that this individual is getting what they need.
Sure.
And so now they finally get into this program and they're like, yes, I don't have to work another job. I can work this job and take care of them. We'll be okay. But then they run into that barrier of, but you need an authorized representative because you can't sign
Can't
your
be
own
both.
paychecks.
Right.
So you can't act as the representative anymore. You have to
Mhm.
be the employee here because that's what you want to do. And then they go like, okay, I guess we'll just use an agency. We can't do this. And if
Oh.
they can just have some kind of directory or just a way to find someone who can represent them,
Mhm.
that would go a long way in getting people that into the self-directed programs that they need
That,
to be in.
that's amazing. Yeah, that is an angle that I haven't heard before. So I'm so interested in this. I wonder if we can get something wrapped into a provider directory somewhere,
Yeah,
or I don't know. I that that would almost be an unpaid position, right?
it is. Yes, it is an
Yeah.
often unpaid position. So you'd have
Yeah.
to find someone who's both willing to
Yeah.
represent you unpaid.
Yeah.
It's usually a family member or a neighbor or a
Yeah.
friend. And if you
But
don't
not
have
everybody has that.
access,
Yeah.
exactly.
Maybe somebody who had previously been in a program and now their person has maybe unfortunately moved on to a facility or something, and they just want to help somebody else. Do you think that would be the type of person that would want to do it?
Yeah, it could be anybody who has that experience. I mean, there could be a day when we're talking about it's built into the program. So if you
Yeah.
have your own, that's fine. But
Yeah.
then you could spend a little bit to fund, the pool of people
Yeah.
that will do this work for you, and it'll be paid through the program at a very low rate or whatever people decide. But then that way, at least they could get people who are separate entities who have the person's interests and well-being in mind.
That's nice.
And that could be an option, but it would have to be somebody who is just very aware of putting that person's needs first and
Yeah.
making sure that they are, obviously all the way above board. And there's a lot
Yeah,
of
of
fraud,
course.
waste, and abuse
Mhm.
checks in programs like this that they would
Mhm.
have to be aware of.
Sure.
But anybody who
Yeah.
is willing to support an individual, and it's not a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's really just attending meetings, making sure the paperwork gets filled out, and making sure that timesheets are reviewed and then approved.
Mhm.
We could go a long way if we could get some kind of group or pool of individuals
Yeah.
who would do that on a needs on a basis if someone doesn't have that someone identified.
Yeah, that's amazing. Is there any other considerations that people should have before they jump feet first into self-direction, in your opinion?
I think that it's always important, obviously, to be aware of what programs exist.
Mhm.
You could be entering into a self-directed program, but maybe there's a different one out there that's even better for you.
Mhm.
Always just keep looking. Just because you find the self-directed program that you first found or were first referred to, just keep looking within your state to see what else is out there.
Mhm.
Because there might be other opportunities, there might be other paid supports that are available to you that's not covered by this specific program, but are covered by another program that you do qualify for.
Mhm.
So it's always important to just keep looking. And the question you always want to ask yourself is, are my needs being met?
Mhm.
If your needs are being met, you're good. You're
Yeah.
successful, you're fine, you're living your life, you're great. But if they aren't, then that's really where you should keep looking, keep asking questions, making sure that you have all the answers that you need so that we can find out, well, if your needs aren't being met, then how can we make that happen?
What would you say to someone who has come to the paperwork? They're eligible for Medicaid. They're ready to do this. They have an authorized representative, but then they come to the paperwork and they feel like they're kind of signing everything away. Like, what would you say to somebody who's just very intimidated by the paperwork and maybe don't quite understand it?
I'd say that you can ask any question
Mhm.
as you go through. So if you don't understand one sentence, ask.
Mhm.
Ask that to be explained to you, because we should explain
Yeah.
it. Like
Yeah.
you should not just think, "Oh, I'm nervous about this. I don't like this." Like, no, I want you to feel comfortable.
Mhm.
We want you to feel
Of
comfortable as
course.
you go through this process. Any question you might have is not a stupid question. There are no stupid questions,
Right.
only stupid answers.
Right.
And it's true. It really is because if you are going through tax paperwork and some of the wording on there is like the entity of this part doesn't, it's like
Yeah.
ask us. We will explain what that means. We will give you the Cliff Notes version. All of our staff who have been enrolling people for years have done this so much that they probably know it by heart. How to explain this to you, and even if you get somebody who's new in the business
Mhm.
and they're learning with you, they're learning with you, and you'll learn together.
Yeah.
And they know who to ask to get those questions answered. You're not alone. That's really
Mhm.
the most important thing to remember. That you know, organizations like public partnerships, we don't want you to be alone. We
Mhm.
want you to have help. We want you to have guidance and support, and just be able to ask someone like, "Well, what does this mean?" And you're never signing your life away.
Right.
I mean, you you should always read everything that you're
Of
signing,
course.
but these programs exist to give you the care that you need, and they're designed basically so that you can pay an individual to take care of you, and that money is going directly to that individual. So it's all worked out in a way that hopefully will give you the care that you need. And I'd say further that if you still don't feel comfortable, keep asking questions.
Yeah.
If you think that you're okay and you're going through, and then something rears its head,
Mhm.
reach out to us and ask us more questions, and make sure
Mhm.
that, because sometimes you might ask a question that nobody's ever thought of before,
Right.
and then boom, we make an improvement because
Exactly.
we've brought that up. So I mean, it's natural to be wary. It's natural to be scared about this kind of stuff. It's natural to be upset even that someone is even asking you to
Mhm.
to become an
Yes.
employer to just meet your basic needs. I completely understand and get that. But at the end of the day, it's really about you know just the bureaucracy that we need to get through to make sure that you receive the supports and care that you need to live successfully within your own home.
Mhm. So you have moved from a talking with participants every day kind of a position to more of an administrative position. But what could you tell participants or potential participants who may be nervous about having a consultant or having somebody help them in their home or with their paperwork? Is there anything that you can say to them that would kind of boost their confidence in them?
Yeah, especially if they're having someone come outside of their home. It really is like, we provide guidance on how to be an employer, how to protect yourself. We provide guidance on like if you don't know how to tell someone that they're doing a bad job
Yeah.
because you've never done that before,
Sure.
then let's talk through it. Let's role play it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go through. And I've had these conversations with people in their home, and it's like so and so is horrible. I hate them. And it's like, okay, well, do you have another
Okay.
employee ready to go? No, they're the only one. It's like, well, they probably wouldn't react well to being told that you hate them. So let's try
Let's
and like look at what they're doing and
Yes.
and give them feedback that's like, I really like when you do this, and I love how you do that.
Yeah.
Could you also then do this?
Mm-hmm.
Just stuff like that that will help them have that conversation with that individual, um, and just sort of like guide them into that process of actually being a manager or a
Mm-hmm.
supervisor in of their own life. Is stuff that a lot of people don't have experience with, and I didn't before I entered this field either, and just like even just supervising another individual, it's not something that everybody goes through in the course of their
Comfortable
own
with
career.
even. Yeah.
No. So it's about crucial conversations and having those kind of conversations with your provider or employee or even your authorized representative, and having the I guess I want to say the confidence to be able to then say, this person isn't working out for me. Even if it's an authorized representative, maybe I need to drop this authorized representative and get someone else in that position so
Mm-hmm.
that they can better support my needs. The employee's fine, but I just need somebody who can manage things better. And that
Mm-hmm.
happens all the time with individuals in these programs. If you're ever concerned that once you sign the paperwork, that's it, you're stuck with all how it
Forever.
is. No, these
Yeah.
changes
No.
happen. You have employees switch to be the authorized
Mm-hmm.
representative, and then the employee becomes the person who's signing things, and then the authorized representative is now the employee.
Mm-hmm.
That can happen. It's easy enough to do, and we can make adjustments on the fly depending on what someone needs.
Absolutely. Amazing. All right. I guess we're kind of coming to the end of our conversation here, but Claude, why do you do what you do? You are very clearly passionate about this sector, the people, the legislature. What does it all mean to you?
I think that what it all means to me is that I just keep thinking of my favorite quote. One of my favorite authors, Terry Pratchett, wrote
Yeah.
that evil begins when you start treating people as things. And I think that that's just really stuck with me ever since I've read that, and I want to stop everyone in the world
Mm-hmm.
from treating people as things.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can do that, it we can we will just be happier for everybody.
Everybody would.
Everyone would just stop treating people as things, and one of the that's like what self-direction does. It treats an individual, hopefully, as an individual. It's
Yes.
person-centered. It's everything. Everyone is different, and if they feel like they're being treated as a thing, then they should advocate. They should fight, and we will help you fight. Um, and make sure that you are treated as an individual within your own home. And I really feel that self-direction itself is the wave of the future. I think that
Mm-hmm.
what we experienced a couple years ago proved that there was problems with how we currently deal with healthcare,
Mm-hmm.
especially when someone is in need. And hopefully, in the future, these programs will grow, become better, and people will be able to live out almost their entire life without having to spend years of it within a facility,
Mm-hmm.
depending on whatever the case may be, a disability, if you're aging, and that might be a much better experience for everyone involved.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been awesome
Thank you for
talking to
having
you.
me.
Of course.
It's been a pleasure, as always.